Creating walkthroughs in Revit. As you can see, I've already set up a scene with a small building, a car, a person here, and some trees. To create a walkthrough, we'll go to our View tab, 3D View Tool, drop-down menu, and we'll click on the Walkthrough tool. To create the walkthrough, we'll click different points along a path that we want to create the video. In this one, we'll start out in the lower left-hand corner and work our way around the building while looking at the building the entire time. And then I'll show you how to actually change the elevation of the camera as it flies around the building. Your very first click will show it'll be where the first camera goes, but you will see the direction in which the camera is looking. But don't pay too much attention to that, as we can modify that after we create the entire path. So I'm just going to work my way around the building, clicking every so often, and every click I make will be a keyframe for the walkthrough. And that's the longest path that we'll want to look at for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that walkthrough, and you can see the path. Now, before we edit the walkthrough, I'm going to go ahead and click in the screen and close the walkthrough path. I'm going to come to my project browser here, and you can see that it has created a walkthrough category. And if I double click this, it'll open the first frame or the last frame of the walkthrough. I'm going to tile my screens here so I can look at the walkthrough while I modify the path and the target camera over on the left-hand side in my floor plan 1. To be able to see the path, I'll need to do one of two things. I can either highlight the border or the crop region in the walkthrough, or I can come to my project browser, right click, and say Show Camera. I want to make sure that my floor plan level view is active, so I'll click on the border here, and then I can go ahead and edit my walkthrough. While you're editing the walkthrough, there are several options that you can use to make the view of the camera and the path the way you want them. And those are found right here under Controls. You can change the active camera or where it's looking. You can change the path, which are these red dots, which are also the keyframes. You can add keyframes or remove keyframes. So we'll keep it on active camera, and then we'll want to go to the Edit Walkthrough tab and work with these controls in conjunction with the views. Right now, I'm at the last frame. You can see I'm the 300 frame out of 300. If you find that you want to make your walkthrough longer, you can change the number of total frames here. What that does will make the walkthrough longer. If you don't add any more keyframes, it'll take longer to move through the space. So if you find that your walkthrough is moving too fast, that's one way to slow it down. Or if you need to create a longer path, it's a good idea to make more frames so it doesn't get too fast. We're going to go ahead and go to the first frame by typing in 1 here. And you can see that the camera is active here. The pink circle is the target, and the 2 angled blue lines are your field of view, as you can see here. You can also see just here that the roof is not being shown, and that's because of your depth of field, which is represented by this line. It's not quite far enough. If I bring it closer, you can see that even more of the building goes away. So you want to make sure you're looking at the entire building or view. You could even include that car back there, it just showed up. And as we work our way through, again, we're going to go to our Edit Walkthrough tab. The best way to do it is to modify your walkthrough is go by keyframes. So we're at our first keyframe, and I'm going to scoot this target a little bit over so we can see the entire building. And as the camera goes around this building, I'm going to keep the target towards the center. And this is an easy way to create a flyby or a walkthrough that goes around the building and yet looks at the building the entire time. So I'll go to my next keyframe, and you can see that the target is looking in the wrong direction for what I want. I'm actually going to not bring it all the way to the center here. I'm going to just bring it to the corner. And I'll just keep working my way around, picking the view that I want. That's a little close. So what I can do now is I can change this to path, and all the red dots now are blue. And I can grab that one and bring it farther away. And then I might want to change it back to active camera. Sometimes when you go back and forth from path to active camera, you lose your target. And an easy way to get it back is just by going to your previous keyframe and then go back to your next, and you're back to the same one you were at. And I'm going to turn that a little bit over. I'm going to keep working my way around. And Revit will infill as smoothly as it can between each of these keyframes. You can see that the keyframes don't go exactly, 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frame. It is interpolating between the distance of the keyframes along the path and the number of frames you have. So we're just going to keep looking at this building as we go around it. And you can see it over here. Make sure that all of your views of your keyframes are how you want them. Until you get to the very end. And that's a little close too, so I'm going to go ahead and change that one as well. And be careful when you change the path, you can see that the target changes too. So you need to make sure you go back to your active camera. And set that up the way you want it to look. And I'm going to go backwards now and just make sure no more of my views were changed too much. And you can look over on the right hand side here as you work through your previous keyframes or your next keyframes and get a sense of what it's going to look like as you work your way around. Now that we've finished that, I'm going to go ahead and activate my walkthrough panel by clicking on the border. And I'm still in my Edit Walkthrough tab and tool, and I can play. And because there's no shadows and it's not rendering and it's not a realistic view, it goes fairly quickly. And you can see if you like what it looks like. If you're happy with it and you want to stop it before it's done, you can hit Escape. Revit will ask you if you want to stop it, and you can say yes. And so that's a fast, easy way to create a walkthrough. You can change how this looks by using your visual style. You can change it to consistent colors. You can do it realistically, shaded. You can even turn shadows on and off as it goes around. Be careful with the shadows. If you go to your sun settings, if your shadows are just a generic lighting, the shadow will move as you work your way around, and it gives it a weird sense to it. So I always suggest to go to a still photo, or not a photo, a still setting, and pick like one we had before, hit apply. Maybe we want longer shadows, too long. This is in the, I'm going to change this to the summer. And you can see the shadows there. Maybe we want morning light. And there we have it. And now you can play this. If you want to play it again, you highlight the border. You can get to Edit Walkthrough from there. And now you can play it. Or edit. And hit Escape. My shadows actually got turned off there for a second. I'm going to turn them back on. There we are. And let's play it now, and you can take a look at where the shadows are. And the shadows are staying where they should be. And so it looks correct. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And so that's very nice, but you might want to do some more things with your walkthrough. Maybe you want to take the camera up and down, especially if you're going to do a walkthrough through the interior of a building, and if it has more than one story, you might want to walk up the stairs. Or in this example, we might want to start up high and fly down towards the house. To do that, we'll need to look at the walkthrough and edit the walkthrough in either an elevation or a section view. So I'm going to go ahead and open the south view. I'm going to tile the windows so we can work between the elevation view and the floor plan view while looking at the walkthrough all at the same time. So I've got them all open. I'm going to edit the walkthrough, and I'm going to go from each keyframe to the next, modifying both the camera angle and the camera target as I go. So what I want to do is start up high, a bird's eye view, and work my way down as I go around the building. And to do that, I'll go ahead and, since my first keyframe, you can see that here, that we're at the very first one out of 500, is set, it's at least looking at the target that we want. But now we need to raise it up. So I'm going to activate my south view, and I'm going to change this to the path. And I was taking note when I did that, which camera was being activated along these blue dots. And so I can zoom in and see that it's this one. And so I want to grab that one and bring it up. And you can see that I selected the correct one because the target and the view field is changing. So I'm going to bring it way up here. But you can see over on the right hand side that my camera angle has now been modified in a way I don't like it. So I'm going to go back to my south elevation, change this to active camera, and now I can grab that target and point it at the house. And I might want to back the view up a little bit. It's a little too close to this house. So now I'm going to activate my floor plan view, go back to path, and grab that same camera target and scoot it farther back. My view got messed up a little bit. Go back to my elevation, active camera, and change the target. And now it's looking a little bit more like I want. Once I do that, I'll need to go to the next keyframe. So I'm going to go back to my Edit Walkthrough tab, select Next Keyframe, and it dropped way too fast for a smooth walkthrough. So now I need to go back to my south elevation, change the path, grab that one angle, and I'm going to bring it up here. And it's still very close to my building, so I'm now going to go to my floor plan view, grab that one, and bring it out. And that looks a little bit better. Edit walkthrough, and I'm just going to keep doing this as I work my way around. Right now I'm just going to focus on the elevation of my path, and then I'll go back and change the target. Maybe one more before I get down to the level that I was before. You can see that the path comes down this way, and as it works its way around the house, it's going to come back to 5 feet off the ground, which is by default where Revit puts the camera height. Okay, so it starts off high and works its way down. So now I'm going to go back to my first keyframe, and you can see that by doing that I'm now had modified that camera angle again. So back to my south elevation, change to active camera, grab the target, and look at the house. Well, now I'm looking too far to the right of the house, so now I need to go back to my plan view, grab the target, and bring it here. So it's constantly a back and forth between the elevation and the target angle and the elevation of the target as well, to make sure that you're looking at the direction that you want it to look. So back to my edit walkthrough, next keyframe. Because I have the path pretty much where I want it, I think it should go a little bit faster now. I want to look farther down just a little bit. Sometimes if you don't select exactly the target, Revit asks you if you want to quit and I don't, so I'm going to say no. I'm going to look down just a little bit more. Back to my next keyframe. That's okay. It's looking a little bit too far in the back, so I'm going to change that to there. Next keyframe. Now I feel that it's a little too close, so I'm going to go back to my floor plan view, go to my path, and this is going to mess up some of the other angles probably, but that's at least better. And I'm actually going to go to the previous keyframe and scoot this one back a little bit. I'm afraid I might get into the trees, which I just did, so I'm going to keep that just in front. That's okay. And I'll work my way around. Drop that view a little bit. Next keyframe. That one's almost good. Just push it up a little bit. Next keyframe. That one's looking a little bit in the wrong direction. There we go. And maybe just look at this one a little bit down as well. And now I'm down at the level that I want to be. And that way I started up high and swooped down as I went around the building. I'm going to go back to frame 1. Look here. You can see that some of these trees aren't showing up, so I'm actually going to do one last thing and go to my first keyframe and that's okay. So now I can go back to my walkthrough view here. I'm going to activate this one and I can press play and I can watch and see what we've done. So now we started up high, we swoop down the whole time we're looking at the building as we work our way around. And that's looking pretty good. You can create a walkthrough, again, hidden line with shadows, or what I do often is I do it in a realistic view. And this is much faster than if you're going to render every frame. I don't suggest that unless you really want a super high quality rendering. But a realistic view does a good job to portray the materials correctly and doesn't take quite as much time. Though if we edit the walkthrough and we press play, you can see that it takes Revit a little bit longer per frame to compile the walkthrough. So I'm going to escape out of that. And the next thing we'll look at is how to export the walkthrough. So the idea here is that we actually have a video, an exterior file. So it's not in Revit, it'll actually be an AVI. And we can email that or do anything we want with that. We can bring it into any kind of video editing program and compile the different walkthroughs however we want. Or we can just play it as is. To export the walkthrough, we'll go to the File tab, Export, and down here you'll see Images and Animations. So this is what we're exporting. We're going to export the walkthrough. And you have to have the walkthrough active, that view active, for this to work. From here, we can select different things. We want to create a walkthrough using all of the frames. Here's the dimensions of the actual crop region, and this is fine. Sometimes I make it a little bit bigger for clarity. For your final project, I would stick with this so the file size doesn't get too big. If you increase the dimensions of this crop region, the file size of your walkthrough gets much bigger, and the walkthrough files are big to begin with. You press OK, it's going to ask you for a name to save your video as. So we'll pick Project 1 Walkthrough 2 because I already created one earlier. We'll say Save. It's going to think for a little bit. And the very first dialog box that comes up is which kind of compressor you want to use. I've loaded several others. You might not have as many as I do. I'm going to go ahead and pick Microsoft Video 1. If you do a full frame uncompressed, then the file size becomes very big. I think everybody will have the Microsoft Video 1. I think that comes with Revit. And then we'll hit OK, and Revit will think for a while. And now that Revit has finished creating the walkthrough, you can see that it's all done. We'll go to the file location that we specified here, and we can see that we have Project Walkthru 2 here. And if we double click it, then Revit shows us the walkthrough that it created. Now this one's a little blurry. That's, if you remember back when we exported the walkthrough, we could increase the dimensions of the walkthrough. If we had done that, the file size would have been a lot bigger, but it would have been a little bit clearer than what you see here. But that is how you create a walkthrough in Revit.